अशोचान अन्वशोचस्त्वं प्रज्ञावादांश्च भाषसे गतासु न गतासुंश्च नानुशोचन्ति पंडिताः. Bhagwan begins his teaching by telling Arjuna that you have grieved for those who should not be grieved. So one reason for not grieving is that they are all, especially Bhishma Pitamaha, Dronacharya, for whom he was mainly grieving, they are dharmic people, they have followed their life in a good way, and ultimately they will get a good gati. But mainly Bhagwan says from the standpoint of that supreme reality, the Atma, there is no need for you to grieve. Because Atma is indestructible. If you are grieving that it will get destroyed, it is indestructible. It's like like somebody wants to, let us say, change the gold ornaments. So the husband tells the wife that let us all dissolve these ornaments, melt these ornaments and make a new one. So the wife says, oh, I will lose the gold. The gold will not be lost, but that form will be lost. Similarly, when a person dies, the form may get lost, but the Atma is not lost. And that personality which was identified with that particular body is also not lost. It moves from one body to another. So Bhagwan says that Atma is avikari, it is free from all modification and change, and it is neither the doer nor can any action be done on that self. So one who thinks that I am slaying someone and one who thinks that I am being slayed, both of them do not know. Because Atma is na jayate mriyate va kadachit. It is neither born nor does it die. Means it doesn't have any of the modifications, change which any other object has. So no change takes place in that pure self. In fact, all the change appears on the self only. Even the time, what we consider as time, everything happens in time. This time is also a concept experienced because of the mind. So time is also within this appearance of this world. So Atma is free from the concept of time and free from all modification. Just as we see on the screen a movie, and in the movie if we see a long passage of time, but still the screen remains untouched by that time. So many people are born and they die, and long passage of time is shown in that movie, but the screen remains untouched by that time. The screen doesn't become old. In the same way, the Atma, the self, our pure self, pure essence, it remains untouched by time. It is nityaha, it is eternal, ajaha, unborn, shashvataha, unchanging, changeless, puranaha, though very ancient, it is always new, always fresh. The sense of being is always fresh. Na hanyate hanyamane sharire. Even when the body is destroyed, that Atma is not destroyed. So in this way, Bhagwan conveys this truth about the self to Arjuna. Though some of the points are repeated, but since this topic is very subtle, so unless it is repeated, one may not be able to comprehend it. Therefore, in our scriptures, some of the points get repeated very often. Further, Bhagwan says, verse number 21. Veda vinashinam nityam ya enamajam avyayam Katham sapurusha partha kam ghatayati hantikam Veda vinashinam nityam yaenamajam avyayam kam ghatayati hantikam. Finally, Bhagavan says कि one who recognizes, realizes this self, Veda avinashinam nityam, one who realizes this self, self-realization or self-recognition takes place. For such a person, and what type of self? Nityam, which is eternal, enam ajam avyayam, which is unborn, and which is free from all defects, all modification, avyayam, one who recognizes this. See, it is one thing to know about it, to get a theoretical understanding of the self, but one who finally experiences it or directly realizes it, such a person understands that the self is not the doer and it's also not an enjoyer. So, katham sa purusha partha kam ghatayati hantikam, such a person, whom will he cause to be slain, and hantikam, and whom will he slay? How can that man slay or can cause others to be slain? Here the word slay is used only because of the context. Otherwise, it means all the actions, whether talking, walking, or any other actions which we perform. There is a sense of doership. At present, when we perform an action, we feel that action is being performed by I, me, the self. But if we analyze this very deeply, and the one who realizes the nature of the self comes to know that the self is not the doer. It's a very difficult concept to comprehend, but as we contemplate, it will become more and more clear. It's like for example, in the mirage, in the desert, we see mirage water. So the sand is there and we see water. And when we see that water, we see movement in that water also. But actually the movement is not in the sand. It appears to be there, but it is actually not there in that sand. Or in the sky, sometimes we see the moon and we see the clouds passing in front of the moon. And when we see the clouds, it appears as though the moon is moving. You must have seen. It appears as though the moon is moving with full speed, but actually the moon is not moving. The clouds are moving. The moon is stationary. But we superimpose the idea of movement of the clouds on the moon, and we say the moon is moving. In the same way, the actions are seen to be happening at the level of the objects outside, at the level of the mind, at the level of the body. Lot of action seems to be happening, and it creates also a sense of doership. But really speaking, the truth is that Atma, I, the pure self, not I, the ego, not I, the thought, not I, the body, but I, the pure self, is not a doer of that action. In its very presence, action happen. It's like example is given of the sun also. The sun shines on earth. By its very presence, activities happen on earth. We get up, we move, lot of people work, animals, birds, plant. They get the energy from the sun, they get the light from the sun, but the sun itself doesn't perform any action. All the actions are happening in mere presence of the sun. In the same way, in the mere presence of that Supreme Self, the actions happen. More about this Bhagavan will be explaining as we go along. But here he says that one who realizes that self becomes free of the sense of doership and becomes free from the sense of enjoyership. Kartrutva and bhoktritva bhavana disappears. That is the main lakshana of a realized master. When he realizes, he knows that I am not doing, in my presence, everything is happening. In fact, Bhagavan, now and then, he mentions this. In the 4th chapter, he says that though I am the creator of this world, know that I am not the creator of this world. Because he talks from that standpoint of that supreme reality. It can be understood even with the example of electricity. Various examples we take to understand this. Examples may have their own beauty, but examples may also have their own defects. So need not stretch the example too far. Yeah. If I take the example electricity, then you might ask, who is the electricity board here? So electricity, just as electricity remains in its own position, and in its presence, the various equipments function. If you attach the fan, it moves. If you attach the bulb, it lights. If you put a radio, it sings. So various equipments function in the presence of electricity, but electricity itself doesn't have any light, doesn't have any sound, doesn't have any heat. By its mere presence, everything happens. So Bhagavan says, hey Arjuna, one who has recognized this nirvikari, changeless self, Veda avinashinam, which is indestructible, eternal, which is birthless and changeless, such a person, katham sa purusha partha, whom will that person cause to be slain, or whom will that person slay? How can that person slay anyone? Means the sense of the doership itself will not happen in that person. So this is from a very sublime standpoint, Bhagavan is revealing the nature of that truth. In the state of ignorance, of course, we have the sense of doership. And when we have the sense of doership, what type of action we should perform and what we should not perform, that and all will be taken up. But here the goal is being indicated. See, if we want to go to a temple, let us say it is located on the top of a hillock. From a distance, the person is shown that temple. We have to reach there. And once you reach that temple, there is no more climbing up. Once you reach the top of that hill, there is no more climbing up and there is no more going down. So we talk about that destination. Then the person says, okay, let us go down to go to the temple. We have to go to the valley. So it may appear contradiction that, oh, you are telling me to go down to go up, but that is the path which will take us on that temple. Similarly, this is the goal which is indicated here. The self, by its very nature, is not a doer because there is no modification happening in the self. Why it is like that? That is the very nature of the self.